I'd like to introduce our first speaker for the day, which is Angus Lang, who appointed Geoffrey to this place. And I had many conversations with Geoffrey about his thought about being here and his enthusiasm about coming to Lancaster. And indeed, that enthusiasm was not unrelated to my enthusiasm about being here as well. So Angus, can you start our day for us?
Excellent, thank you, Jan. Thank you very much for that opening, and I am delighted, genuinely delighted to be at this event. But like everyone else, sad by the trigger for this event. But as Jan had said, I had the privilege of appointing Geoffrey to the chair at Lancaster. And he was, in my view, without doubt, one of the academics I will remember for the rest of my life. He was an academic who had impact, genuine impact on individuals, impact on organizations. And it was a combination of what he did and how he did it, as a point I think Jan was starting to pick up on. Because I knew Geoffrey before he joined Lancaster. Mostly, it has to be said, on the basis of reputation. But I did have some slight personal knowledge of Geoffrey before I started, having been on one memorable occasion at a BAFA event, being robustly, but as you can imagine from Geoffrey, very politely challenged around the value and the role of the Chartered Association of Business Schools academic journal guide. I came away from that discussion with absolutely no doubt about two things. One, his intellectual ability, and secondly, his steel, his inner steel, his determination to ensure that his view, if not necessarily prevailing, was at very least heard. Now, what I subsequently learned from working with Geoffrey at Lancaster was that this intellectual ability, that determination, was wrapped up in a genuinely warm and kind personality. Now, he had very high standards of himself, very high standards of others. But what was really striking was his ability and his willingness to support others in reaching the standards that he set. Unlike many colleagues we can all point to who have high standards and do nothing to try and lift up colleagues to match those standards, Geoffrey was passionate about bringing people up to his standard. And for me, in so many ways, he epitomized what we look for in a contemporary academic. We take the outstanding intellect almost as a given, but then it was his engagement with practice and being, as has been said already, very passionate about students. So it was about impact. It was about making an impact on thinking, on practice, and on people. And that is what we as an academy need to do today. So when we appointed Geoffrey, sustainability was becoming a central theme for the management school at Lancaster. We'd been in the fortunate position where the Rubin Foundation had funded the Pentland Centre for Sustainability in Business, and an increasing number of colleagues from across the school were engaging with that broad sustainability agenda. And Geoffrey joined the centre absolutely seamlessly, taking up the role, first of all, as one of the deputy directors, and then subsequently as the interim director. And it was in this context that I first came to really appreciate Geoffrey's leadership skills, the handling of what were unequivocally challenging circumstances with genuine aplomb, and engaging the Pentland Centre fully with the interests and ambitions of the school. He was very much an institution builder. But his modesty also came out in this, because I was looking at what he was doing and thinking, well, we've got a ready-made director for the centre. But while he accepted the interim role without any hesitation whatsoever, he made it abundantly clear, and I mean abundantly clear that he had no desire to take on the directorship of the centre on a permanent basis. He'd served as head of school at Royal Holloway, and he was adamant that his contribution at Lancaster, his legacy, would be as an academic in the field of accounting and sustainability. A legacy which, although cut somewhat short, would be envied by many academics who enjoyed a far, far longer career. So impact over a relatively shorter number of years than many of us have was absolutely enormous. And his sense of commitment to the sustainability agenda to the institution was such that despite this absolute desire to refocus on his research, he was really instrumental in supporting the ongoing development of the Pentland Centre, not least through the role he played in encouraging Jan Bebbington to join LUMS as the director. And the centre has unequivocally flourished under Jan's leadership. So quite a legacy that Geoffrey left to Lancaster. Now, in linking back to that broader sustainability agenda, there does feel to be something appropriate about celebrating Geoffrey's legacy in the week of COP26. So if we look over the past quarter of a century since the initial COP summit, sustainability has become increasingly central part of our lives, in the operations of organizations, companies, in public policy. And business schools have reflected this rising salience, with sustainability becoming an increasingly significant theme, which cuts across the full range of our research and teaching activities. We can cite many examples. The growing prominence of the SDGs in the thinking of business schools, the evolution of the Responsible Research in Business and Management Network, the creation of the Positive Impact Rating, all point to the central place of the wider ESG agenda, the responsibility agenda of business schools, which is likely to, almost certain, to expand in the decades coming. Now, business schools such as Lancaster have unequivocally, in my view, the potential to be important players in supporting that transition to a much more sustainable economy and supporting responsible businesses. Our research around, for example, the consumption of plastics, plastic waste, our engagement, for example, around supporting eco-innovation, our teaching in inculcating a clear sense of social and societal responsibility amongst our students. These are all dimensions that are going to become an increasingly significant part of our future. Now, Geoffrey, in his all too short time at Lancaster, played a central role in progressing this agenda through his research, through his teaching, and last but most certainly not least, his leadership. He, if you like, bequeathed us a platform, and it is our responsibility to build on that platform. And I am certain there is the capability and the commitment in the school to really build on that platform. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Jan, to say these few words. And can I now pass back to you to bring our next speaker in? Thank you.